Now for the message for today, we have four different speakers who are going to give us their take on writing and what it means from us. We'll be hearing from Del Carpenter, Flora Lynn Groff, Michael Finelli, and Jim O'Loughlin. So we'll start with Del Carpenter. Take it away, Del.
My writing these days is mostly snippets of theology, which I write on Facebook, usually in responses to things that other people have written. I'm going to start, and so I'm going to, rather than talking about my process of writing, I'm just going to read a bunch of things that I've written, but they're snippets. So this one was written as a Facebook birthday wish for a friend. Happy birthday. Most of the time, in most endeavors, we recognize our efforts merit a status of also ran. We are lucky if, as we get older, our attitude changes to recognizing our real status as also one. Regarding the wording of the Pledge of Allegiance, making a promise of allegiance to a flag doesn't make sense. What I think our pledge should be is, I pledge allegiance to the United States of America, to the Constitution, to the Bill of Rights, and to the freedoms and responsibilities we share as citizens. There was a 9/16/20 call about a boycott to boycott the NFL due to kneeling by players during the anthem. I think the kneeling is a sign of respect for the possibilities of America. The kneeling calls attention to America's incomplete delivery on promises and shows a belief that America could make good on its promises for more than just people like me. Nobody bothers to kneel without a hope that improvements can be made. Our response to the civil rights struggles of the 1960s was a recognition our country was not yet perfect. We are again faced with clear evidence we need improvement. We can do better. We have a long history of extending our democracy from political rights for some to getting closer to all rights for all people. On September 2nd, a Facebook post in the aftermath of violent events in Kenosha, Wisconsin, claimed a little boy, Kyle Rittenhouse, was touted as a criminal, while real criminals were touted as heroes. I posted, victims of a miscarriage of justice do not need to be really good people to be victims of a miscarriage of justice. And otherwise good people do not get a free pass when they create a miscarriage of justice. Boy Scouts can become dangerous criminals. That little boy in the picture is now 17, old enough to think of himself as a man, foolish enough to think carrying an assault rifle makes him a man, and stupid enough, or even just inexperienced enough, to not have enough judgment to prevent his emotions and his personal sense of importance from leading him to actions that did make him a dangerous criminal. A November 6th email sent to Senator Charles Grassley. A real Republican cares more about the country than his own career. Donald J. Trump is the current #1 Republican in name only, probably the most rhino ever. One of your jobs as a senator is to tell him he lost the election and the country can't afford his continuing efforts to divide us. One of your jobs as a senator is to do that publicly. There are at least 70 million voters who need an assurance their willingness to live with the actual results is the right thing to do. From December 20th. I think the largest error within Judaism and Christianity is the idea of God's chosen people in an exclusive sense. That is probably a common principle among most other religions too. It is a principle that is always undermining the ideals of democracy. And my final thing, more and more of humanity has come to realize our most important moral relationship is with each other. No God or gods has any need for our help. The beings who need our help are all our neighbors, all of humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Del. And I think it's important to note that writing happens in a lot of different contexts, and you don't have to be, publishing books or going to poetry readings or whatever to be engaging with writing in a meaningful way. So thank you very much for that. And also in this pandemic time, we are more and more interacting with each other by writing rather than face to face. So thank you for that. Floralyn Groff is next. And don't forget to unmute.
Hello.
Hello.
My earliest experience as a writer was when I was in high school and I won first place in a national speech contest through my church. That piece was called Faith in a Changing Creation. 55 plus years later, I have reread the presentation and am struck by how much has changed and how much has stayed the same. Through the subsequent years, my practice of writing has changed me and helped me grow in many ways. It has uplifted me, grounded me, and helped me shape my beliefs and values. Writing has been a tool for healing during times of personal pain, confusion, and grief. I have journaled for many years, sometimes faithfully, sometimes sporadically, depending what else was going on in my life. About 30 years ago, I took a one-week writing workshop through the Split Rock Arts program in Duluth, Minnesota. The workshop was called Using Yourself as the Source of the Story. It was led by Christina Baldwin, who has written a number of books, including Calling the Circle. We were each to come to the workshop with a piece that we had written about an experience in our life. I shared a piece called Roadkill, in which I described a solo personal spiritual retreat I had taken. After the week of gathering, we all felt so convinced that we didn't want our experience to end. We asked Christina if she would consider meeting with the 12 of us again, and she agreed to do so for a couple of times. And then if we wanted to continue it, would be on our own. And that is what happened. So for over 25 years, we met twice a year at some agreed upon retreat space, rotating the leadership and responsibility to lead and organize. Because of this marvelous continuous contact, I produced numerous pieces that shared some experience that I had in my life. I am now getting some help with editing and organizing to determine what I plan to do with my collection of stories and poems. But even if I do nothing, they have already served their purpose as a therapeutic tool for me. The writing has been a tool I have used as a memory keeper, a personal therapist and problem solver, a piece for emotional release and clarification. It has turned me into a storyteller and a keeper of adventures through the written word. Writing can be very meditative and can provide a place for soul searching. I believe in the power of the brain to connect the pen to the paper in ways that can produce amazing results. If one can take the time to write without judgment or self-criticism and just let the thoughts flow, it may even feel like there is a connection with something outside of one's own conscious control, or perhaps even some divine force. I have also been influenced by Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way and The Vein of Gold, which encouraged me in various ways in how to enhance my own creativity. Writing has continued to be a creative process that has helped me to define who I am as a continuously growing spiritual being. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Floralyn. And up next, we have Michael Finelli. Don't forget
Good morning,
to unmute.
everybody. It's an honor to be here with everybody. I'm going to take a different bent today. Everybody's given wonderful anecdotal ideas. I'm going to talk about the craft of writing, particularly in my area of dealing with music performance, music pedagogy, teaching, and musicology. I was very much influenced by my teacher, Paul Rowland at the University of Illinois, who was an internationally known violinist, pedagogue, prolific researcher. And it was a serendipitous event that I became his research assistant and teacher of one of 5. And we embarked on a 5-year or 4-year research project called the University of Illinois String Research Project, which was a $400,000 funded project by HEW in the mid-60s on all aspects of learning how to play string instruments in the cognitive, behavioral, and emotional domains. And so I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about some of the major things that he taught me in that is used today in my research. One was to pick a topic. It could be something that you're very passionate about or mild curiosity. And as you go into the process, you find some of these things that you thought were so passionate do not pan out, and those that were a mere curiosity are the things that you really become involved in. Secondly, he insisted on developing a macro outline, come back and do the micro points later on. And then he was a very, very positive person about doing research to the point of being obsessive. But he also taught us that we should be humble and that we should understand our research is dependent on so many others. And he told me to make sure that I gave time to create professional and personal interrelationships with the librarians, with the archivists, all the people that I was working with. Revisit the outline, edit it, and then he told me not to worry about length. He said, the main thing is rather the depth and breadth of your writing. Focus on what is necessary for validation, and of all things, keep the reader engaged and don't be didactic. Finally, he said also the first paragraph should be an introductory section that really engages the reader's curiosity, and follow it a middle section of the book that's a page burner, and then one with a concluding summative section that leaves the reader continuously to ponder and reconsider what they have read. He always believed that academic writing didn't have to be dry and so sterile. And finally, editing is an ongoing process. And he taught me something I never thought about. As I got to either the end of the day or end of the chapter, I would record myself reading that and play it back to see how, as he said, all of our senses are engaged in reading. And he was a gestaltist to the end. Second and lastly, crucial to find good readers, those that give you a divergent assessment of the text, not always agreeing, but challenging you. And it's essential to be a good editor. And he insisted, if you're going to publish, index. He couldn't stand books that it would be long have no indexes. Again, he was very, very wise. So in the end, Paul Roland, who was a Jew that came from Hungary, who suffered many things, his music, his performance, and his research and teaching were the extension of his philosophy and spirituality. He was a Unitarian in 1965. I became a Unitarian because of Paul Roland, and this has been my philosophy throughout my life. Thank you.
Thank you, very much. And up next, we have Jim O'Loughlin.
All right, thank you, Karen. So I think we often focus a lot on the personal, private aspects of writing, and those are, and I don't want to diminish those because those are absolutely true. That's one of the main reasons that people write. It can often be a very contemplative act, but it can also be a really social act, or it potentially can be. And so I want to just talk a little bit about the one aspect of my writing, which has been the Final Thursday reading series that I host over at the Hearst Center now. It's celebrating its 20th season. It started at Bought Again Books, then moved over to the Hearst, and I've been working with Sherry there for now a number of years. And the series brings in a published author each month, preceded by an open mic where people from just anyone who wants to can step up and read 5 minutes of their own work. A number of people here have done this in the past. And it's become something that I found has really kind of structured my writing as I try more or less successfully to come up with a new piece every month for the series. And so I've ended up developing a kind of specialization in what's called flash fiction, the very short pieces of fiction that you can read within a limited space of time. So I'll just read one of them. And I ended up publishing one of these in a book kind of after I don't know how many years. But this is a drabble, which is a story that has to be exactly 100 words. And it was kind of inspired after one of the Cedar River floods of past years. It's called Choices Made. Later, he would be able to consider all that he had left behind and would never see again. The wedding album, the birth certificates, the kids' favorite toys, even the laptop. In the moment, though, with the storm surging and shingles peeling off the roof like masking tape, he only had time to grab what he could on the way out. Still, even as he ran to the car, dripping sweat and bleeding from the gash in his forehead, with the river already up to the wheel wells, he realized that the choices he had just made said something about who he was. In his arms, he held a phone book, the cantaloupe that had just turned ripe, and a gallon of milk. And he had made sure to lock the front door.